Hello there and welcome to the video. We are going to continue to explore how the masters of today use the knowledge of old games, of old famous combinations to use in their own games to their benefit. And before we look at the game that is sort of the main game of the video, we're going to look at an old, very famous game which contains possibly one of the most famous combination ever played. And this was game between Rutlevi with white and Rubinstein with black. We're just going to have a quick look, and the opening we're basically going to more or less skip over. Terrace defense, symmetrical stuff. Looks a lot like, at the end of the day, like a Queen's Gambit accepted after black takes on c4. And you'll notice after rook d8, queen e2, bishop e7 castles, that we have more or less a symmetrical position. However, it's black to move, and black is a keeper Rubinstein. And well, this shows that white hasn't really played the opening very well, because black has an extra move, rook d8, and it's his move, so he kind of won two tempos, one gaining the move and two playing rook d8. So some initiative now for black. He played 95, and perhaps white was a little bit too frisky with his pawns. He played f4, bishop c7 and e4. So while he's gaining space, he's also opening up a dangerous diagonal here, and after rook a to c8 he played e5. So now we have two very dangerous diagonals. Rubinstein immediately went to the g1 to a7 diagonal with tempo, with a check, king h1, and now he played knight to g4. And here we have an important piece configuration, knight here and the very strong bishops. If black is allowed to move again, he's going to play queen h4. And because of the strong bishops, you really don't have any defense. The king can't run, the g pawn is pinned. We're going to take on h2, and if you play h3, I'm going to take that pawn. So we're going to be in trouble here or here. And white doesn't really have any good way here. For instance, bishop takes h7 doesn't really work. King takes, and queen takes g4, rook to 2. We're hitting this. It's a problem. If you take immediately on g4, take on d3. Hitting this, again, problems. Threatening this, problems. So after knight g4, Rutlevi went for bishop e4, trying to block this diagonal. But this allows queen to h4, threatening mate. And it seems like you have two choices, g3 or h3. In the game, Rutlevi went g3. If he plays h3, and you have all these tactical motifs and ideas are important, because this is how we learn. This is how we improve our knowledge, by knowing these patterns. And rook takes c3 is very strong here. The reason is you can't take on h3 because on b7 because I take on h3. Spoiler alert. And this all hinges on the fact that after h3, if the queen was not here, we will play queen h4. And we have a mating pattern that I haven't covered on my channel, but we will soon. Takes and queen h4 mate. But since the queen is here, we're going to take the knight with the queen. So we're trying to deflect the queen. So that's why after h3, we play rook takes c3. Again, this mate threat on h3 saves us. So if you take on c3, I have time to take on e4. And now you can't take because of queen g3. Threatening mate, and if you take, I go back to h4 with mate. So now if you take on g4, I can take and play rook d3. Hitting the bishop, and then another beautiful mate threat on h3. Black wins decisive material. So this combination, depends on this. Black has this resource. Don't know if white saw this, but he played g3. And now Rubinstein unleashed fire. He played rook takes c3, similar to the other line. If I take on c3, I take on e4. Take this, jack. if you interpose a give this mate. Rotlevi tried to take the queen, but rook d2, again trying to deflect the queen from e4, and this is just beautiful stuff. He took, bishop takes e4, queen g2, and the final move rook h3 using the pin, and it all lines up perfectly for black. If you take on e4, I take on h2 mate. So Rotlevi resigned. So in 2013, again we're going to look at different on the black side. And Vishy Anand has black against Levon Aronian. And Vishy has well, stayed true to the semi-Slav defense. He has many nice games in it. And we're just going to look through the opening here. D takes e4. Usually black plays b5. And wants to put the bishop on b7, which he does. a3, rook to c8. And we have a theoretical line here, which we're not going to discuss, too much. And in fact, I think when talking about this game, Anand said that this was all more or less prepared, but at this point, he forgot what to do. And spent a lot of time, but was able to reproduce the correct move here. And the correct move is simply amazing. Or the sequence of moves that happen after this move. So the best move is to play bishop to c5, to hang the bishop. Now, similar to what we had in Rubinstein, the same tactical patterns start to appear. For instance, if you were to take an f8, I can take a d4, king here, and remember this, mate threat, g-pawn is pinned. So you can't really defend, you can't play h3 because I take it, again it's mate, same bishops as Rubinstein, same pieces, we should make them green because they are fantastic. And if, we'd just take on h3. Even if we couldn't take on h3, we would have this move, this pattern again. Takes and mate here. So this is knight takes f8. Well, what about d takes c5? A logical question. Then we take with a knight. And now we have similar stuff coming up. There's queen d4 check in some lines. This is hanging. For instance, if we play h3, we can take on d3. And if you take an f8, I mean, there are many other moves, but just to give you a sample line here, knight f2 check. And, okay, it's going to be equal material, but black's pieces will be super, super active. So in the end, white went for bishop to e2 instead of taking c5. But now, another amazing move. Knight into e5. Knight d to e5. Boom. And again, amazing tactics. If we take on g4, I'm not gonna, analyze everything. I mean, this game has been analyzed in many videos and articles. I just want to show you, how the tactical patterns and the knowledge of the old games, show up. And Anand has said, if this was played 100 years ago, this would have been the Rotlevi-Rubinstein game. It's more like the modern Rotlevi-Rubinstein game. So bishop takes d4 is played. What happens if it takes on e5? Well, we all know this one, don't we? King h1. And, well, I'll link to the pattern recognition video, but you all know the smothered mate. One of our favorite mating patterns. So f takes e5 is out of the question. So Aronian took on g4. Bishop takes d4 first, and then knight takes d4. And again, look at these beautiful pieces, just like Rubinstein. Now knight takes f8, and we'd love to play queen h4. But then white would be really happy because he has queen h7, and he would trade the queens. Since white is now up a rook, he can trade his knight while trading the queens, and he'll be up material. So f5 to block that. Now we're threatening queen h4. This can't be allowed, so knight g6. But we simply have time for this. Queen takes h3, and queen takes g6. And just like in the lines where we had, this dance with queen g3, you take on g4, and the queen comes back to h4 with mate. We have the same thing. If you take on g4, I'm simply going to mate on the h file, wherever I want actually. and the king is checkmated. So after h3, queen takes g6, queen e2 was played by Aronian, queen h5, and this threatens to take on h3. We saw this pattern in Rubinstein. This has to be defended, but now the final move, bishop e3, cutting off the defense here of the h3 square. And yeah, there's simply no defense for white, and Aronian resigned. So again, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope also you learned something, from what I'm trying to convey to you. How the knowledge of these old games, these fantastic combinations, how they help, for modern players. And obviously, super aware of this masterpiece that Rubinstein played, and you see all these same patterns. The piece lineups, especially these pieces here, exactly like in the Rubinstein game, and the queen threatening to come to h4, and the same king in big trouble here. So great game, a good example, and the next example will be a slightly longer video, and it will not be tactical, it will be more positional stuff. So stay tuned for that. See you then. Bye bye.